And the last idea I have is to change CVs into a support class, which this one, I'll admit, is not very fleshed out at all and would require massive changes. But what if you had CVs dropping smokes, heals, damage controls for their teammates, similar to, I don't know, how some scenarios worked, where there's healing locations, or maybe like Arms Race, where there's different buffs that CVs could drop at different times that last a short amount of time. It's a very rough idea, but it would keep CVs in the game, make the game more dynamic, and remove the frustrating fly anywhere, deal massive damage that's unhealable, that there's no player versus player interaction. So special carriers are in the development blog. This is something I did not expect at all. As you can see, I had an idea of support carriers being potentially a great way to change carriers, make them better for the game, and that was over a year ago. If you want to, you can go back and watch through that video. It's not a video I'm particularly proud of how I went about that conversation, but some of the points I make, I do agree with to this day. But before I get into why I still think support carriers could be a really good option for the game, we got to go over this dev blog and really get into what Wargaming is proposing here. So support aircraft carriers are going to enter the game as alternative tech tree branches for existing strike carriers. They will be different from strike carriers by their special armament and consumables of their squadrons. And just like existing carriers, they will behave exactly the same in having even numbered tiers, as well as having the same equal weighting in the matchmaking queue. Now here we find the big issue. All support carriers are equipped with squadrons armed with special stun bombs. The main task of these ships is to support their allies, which I really like. In the current concept, they are especially effective at assisting ships that are good at setting fires and causing floods, which I don't like. If you know me, I think dots are the worst form of damage in this game. So stun bombs deal little to no damage on impact. It remains to be seen what that actually is, and have a very low chance of setting fires, which is not a 0% chance of lighting fires, mind you. And when they hit an enemy ship, stun bombs will temporarily block the use of certain consumables by that ship, such as damage control party, defensive fire, or smoke generator. We'll see what that actually ends up looking like, but that could be absolutely terrifying. And this really is the major problem with this proposal. The amount of time consumables are disabled depends on the number of bombs that hit, ranging from just a few seconds if one bomb hits, to several minutes in the rare case where all bombs drop land on the target. That's some insane variance. This game already, in my opinion, has far too much variance in its random chance. Battleships, for example, have the capability of dev striking any ship off the map at any time, pretty much at any range, given you have enough pen to go through the belt. And yet at the same time, they have the capacity to do 0 damage when they happen to miss, and the dispersion goes wonky. I think there's just far too much variance already in the game, and a few seconds to several minutes when it comes to things like damage control party is just way, way too long. It's insane to me how much random variance they're trying to add to this game. I think this is horrible. Continuing on, fire and flood damage done to a ship while under the effect of these stun bombs, regardless of what ship caused the status effect, will count as damage done in the statistics of the support carrier player, leading to, hopefully, support carrier XP for helping their team deal that damage. That makes sense to me. These support squadrons are also equipped with special consumables to protect allied ships. This, I think, is very cool. An aerial smoke screen that can be deployed, which works similar to a normal smoke generator consumable on some surface ships. and chaff that can be dropped to hinder or nullify the effects of surveillance radar. If a ship that is currently using its radar enters a chaffed area, that radar will automatically stop and go on the cooldown phase. So you can drop this over top of, let's say, a Des Moines who's using radar to spot one of your friendly destroyers, and that enemy Des Moines would instantly not be using its radar, and it would go on cooldown right away. A very powerful effect. And if the chaff is dropped on a friendly destroyer, and then an enemy ship radars that friendly destroyer will take a little bit longer to show up on the rest of the enemy's screens during that radar. I also think that's a very powerful effect of chaff. Those extra few seconds before the entire enemy team can shoot at a destroyer is very critical in dealing damage to that destroyer, pushing them out of a cap, especially in competitive game modes. And of course, these support aircraft carriers are in the early stages of development, so we should probably expect things to change, considering how long it's taken and how many changes have happened to the previous rework of carriers, as well as how long submarines are taking to develop. So the big problem I have with this iteration of support carriers really comes down to these stun bombs and the incredible variance and randomness that will be associated with them, and them helping to deal some of the worst form of damage in the game in the form of dot damage. I think that the problem with carriers right now is the damage they deal feels unfair for the surface ship. For the carrier player, the AA feels incredibly random and unrewarding to fight against for the carrier player. I think the interaction between surface ships and aircraft is far too random and left out of the control of players, and that is really not an enjoyable way to play a multiplayer PvP experience. Removing player agency, player control, is not good for an interesting, engaging display of skill between two players. As for these support carriers, we'll have to see what the other aircraft are available to these support carriers. They may just turn into another form of damage dealing to the enemy team, like the current strike carriers are. I foresee that these support squadrons aren't going to be used very much if the carrier player doesn't properly get rewarded for it and feel like those support squadrons will have any battle impact. As at the end of the day, everyone's going to use the best possible tools at their disposal to win the game. So I think this is just going to be another annoying gimmick of damage and frustration for the surface ship players coming from the sky. Disabling damage control for up to potentially multiple minutes at a time is crazy. It's only going to serve to make the game more passive than it already is. And if you've been watching my videos, you'll know how much of an issue I have with the way Wargaming has been designing and crafting the meta of this game to be so passive. The tier 10 games, especially super ship games, basically all the engagements are outside 20 kilometers these days until the very final minutes of a match, when the game is essentially decided already. So if it were up to me, how would I rework these support carriers or introduce these support carriers? I would probably try and remove the strike carriers completely and have support carriers be the form of carrier in the game. I would also remove stun bombs completely. I would love to see aircraft carriers in this game be primarily team support. Not dealing damage support, not creating instant crossfires anywhere on the map to do damage to enemy ships support. I would love to see them be supporting their teammates in their plays. And that way, it wouldn't be as frustrating to play against. It would only serve to amplify surface ships fighting other surface ships, rather than be the primary source of damage and conflict for the enemy surface ships to deal with. Of course, that is a very dramatic change, and it likely wouldn't be very popular, since I'm of the opinion that carriers are mainly popular because they're so strong. and people want to play them because they feel so powerful in them and able to impact the game across the whole map and really carry their team to wins. Removing that, I don't think carriers would be that enjoyable or interesting to play, since the game is called World of Warships, and people are probably getting into this game to play surface ships, not to play aircraft as much. So unfortunately, my idea of support squadrons like they have somewhat implemented here probably wouldn't go over so well. But my idea is, of course, similar to what they have proposed, giving smoke generators to the aircraft, dropping chaff to hopefully disable surveillance radars, make it harder for enemy radars to spot friendly destroyers, and that would help augment pushes and destroyers that can make some flanking plays, that kind of thing. Smoke screens to protect a critical allied ship that is maybe getting focused out by the enemy team. These are all very cool support plays. I talked, of course, in my video at the beginning there about different healing zones, maybe potential ways of repairing damaged modules on ships. That kind of thing I think would be so cool as a team supporter. Almost like the healer in the classic tank DPS healer that can be seen in so many other popular games. So overall, I really do like the idea of support carriers. I would love to see strike carriers be toned down, maybe even converted into more supporting of their team. The problem, unfortunately, with this iteration of support carriers is they're just more support damage to the enemy team. They're still focused on specifically targeting out one enemy ship at a time. I would love to see that focus shifted to targeting out a friendly ship to support at a given time. That's my idea for support carriers and how I think they could be implemented in the game in a very positive, constructive way that wouldn't be very frustrating to deal with, and who knows, might actually promote closer ranged combat if the support a carrier is giving is capable of helping a ship survive in those closer quarters engagements. So let me know in the comments below what you think of these proposed support carriers and of my ideas of these more supporting their teammates rather than supporting attacking specific enemy ships. I'd love to hear your thoughts on these ideas, and thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day.